Hey there. Today I'm going to be going over two late but also very interesting additions to the Black Order roster, as well as a new leadership for an old character. My name is Nate, and welcome to the Gamers Guild. Alright, so I will admit, while I am quite the fan of Black Swan from the comics, Supergiant isn't a character that I am as familiar with. However, the designers at AMG have really done some interesting things with this box and the design space within. But before I do get into all of that, I want to do my usual thanking of the guild sponsors, Tritex Games based in the UK and War Room Hobbies based here in Tennessee. Both are great local gaming stores that have game nights at their stores and are supporting their local communities. And they both have some codes that will save you even more off of their already discounted prices. If you use the code TritexGGCP5 at checkout, you will save an extra 5% off from Tritex's MCP selection. And if you check out at War Room Hobbies, you can use the code MCP2022 for an extra 10% off of your order, whether it is for MCP, Legion, or whatever else you're into. So if you're shopping online anyways, please consider using these as options to support an LGS that is hosting events and game nights instead of a big warehouse company. So, if these two dangerous ladies do catch your eye, consider using the links down in the description to help support the channel. However, if you are already shopping through your LGS, that's awesome, keep supporting them, we understand. But if you're wanting a way to support the guild's videos or podcast, check out our Patreon page. For just $1 a month or $12 over the course of a year, you can help us continue to put out content for Marvel Crisis Protocol as a podcast and here on YouTube. And I will also say thank you to all the members of the Guild Hall who are supporting what we do here. If it wasn't for you guys, we wouldn't have been able to launch the podcast anyway. So, also though, we do have a monthly giveaway thanks to Tritex. All you need to do to enter is be subscribed to the channel and leave a comment on a video the same month that that video was released. Now, let's get into the fun stuff, and I'm going to start with Black Swan because Supergiant's card is a trip, and I'm really not sure how to follow her up. So first of all, we finally have the first cards printed in the new format. So hate them or love them, they are now here, at least. And so we start with Black Swan, who has an alter ego of Black Swan. She has 6 stamina, moves medium, is size 2, and 4 threat. On defense, she has a 4 physical and energy with a 3 mystic defense. So a pretty standard baseline for a 4 threat character. Her builder is simply a physical strike with a range of 2, strength of 5, and costs nothing. And as you might expect, this attack will gain her power equal to damage dealt. But on a wild, the attack will let you push an enemy character of size 4 or less away short before damage is dealt. And the timing on this can be really nice if this attack is dazing a target, because you can still move them out of position before they daze. And because it is a May, well, if you don't want to, you don't have to. You can rather just have them stay put. Her next attack is then an energy I-beam. But thankfully the attack itself isn't actually a beam. It does have a range of 3, strength of 5 for 1 power. But after the attack is resolved, the enemy character is incinerated. And on a wild, the attack gains Pierce, which will let you change one of the defending character's crits, wilds, or blocks into a blank. So the attack can put out some decent damage, and I think its primary use is just going to be for the Incinerate. Then her big spender is a physical attack called Everything Dies. Has a range of 2, strength of 8 for 4 power. And if you get a wild, you can throw the enemy character short after the attack is resolved. No direction or size restrictions on that, so that's a thing. Additionally though, if you roll a hit, the attack gains a new word, or trigger, or whatever you want to call them, follow-up. Follow-up will let Swan make a free I-beam attack targeting the original target. Additionally, that follow-up attack gets to ignore range and line of sight. So unless the target has stealth, it's going to be very hard to get away from the follow-up attack. So her attacks are all useful, all have different situations in which they can be used, and should lay out a decent bit of pain. But she then additionally has 4 superpowers. First up is Charge. You are probably familiar with it at this point if you've been playing the game even for just like a month. But just in case you aren't, it costs 2 power and an action, but lets the character make a move action followed by an attack action, and can only be used once per turn. Her second power is a reactive one called Midnight Field that has a cost of X. She can use this when fitting it against an attack. For each power spent, Swan can change one wild in the attack roll into a blank. So kind of like MODOK's Psionic Force Field, but it costs power to use. And honestly, this is a really strong superpower even if it does cost some resources to use. Not only will this mess up your opponent's triggers that they might try and hit, it also just takes away successful results from their attack. But at least she does have to spend power to do it. Her next reactive power is a bit more offensively minded, and it's called Telepathic Suggestion. It costs 1 power and can be used when Swan is attacking an enemy character. She can then reroll one of the defender's dice. So basically, for 1 power, she can use Green Goblin's Spider-Foe's Leadership, which, if you haven't heard, is really good. Finally, as we get to her innate powers, she has Flight and Gem Bearer keywords for the Power Gem. That's right, the drum I was about to beat about her biggest weakness being power generation just got tossed out the window, well, kind of at least. It is worth mentioning before we get into the pros and cons that there are no changes on her injured side. Her pros are basically that she has a little bit of everything that you probably want. A couple of her attacks check off the boxes of being able to have some control elements on her card. Her spender is multiple attacks, so she has some action efficiency there, not to mention just a way to do more than just 2 attacks in a turn. And speaking of action efficiency, she has a charge, which is just literally 2 actions for the cost of 1. She also has both offensive and defensive superpowers to help improve results or negate your opponent's results. Not in the traditional sense of rerolling your own dice, but solid ways to improve her durability and offensive output nonetheless. She isn't quite in the realm of tanky, but with 6 stamina on both sides and 4s on the most common attack types, she isn't made of glass by any means. The problem is that everything that I have talked about except for her basic strike cost power. And besides taking damage, she only gets power from that strike, which is that one big downside. So, as a 4 threat at least, she's going to be a pretty power-hungry character. Some leaderships will help that, like A-Force and Red Skull's Cabal, but at 5 threat with the Power Gem, she just becomes a really well-rounded 5 threat that isn't going to excel at any one thing, but can just be a great versatile piece on the board. As far as affiliations go, I think that her 4 threat version will probably want to stick to places that generate power for her, and it's very possible that once she gets going on power, she can maintain it on her own, but getting a boost from Red Skull or She-Hulk can really make her a continual threat. Gemmed up Black Swan, though, I think can go anywhere she pleases. Not to mention, at 5 threat, she has the opening play of getting to the midline objective, throwing a punch, and making an opponent reroll one of their successes. Not to mention a wild push that will probably send them off that middle point, with the exception of Dormammu. All in all, I feel like she's going to be a solid character that can easily be splashed around if you want her, without necessarily forcing her into any one spot. Her packmate, though, while extremely interesting, is probably not quite as versatile. Supergiant has the alter ego of, well, Supergiant. She has 5 stamina, moves short, is size 2 and 3 threat. Her defenses are all over the place with 1 physical defense, 3 energy, and 4 mystic. And while this may not seem great, I think you should hold judgment until you see her full card. Her first attack is Mystic, called Mental Vampire. Has a range of 3, strength of 5, and costs nothing. She will automatically gain 1 power, and if the attack deals damage, she triggers Drain Life, which will let her heal 1, which is quite handy for a card like Blood to Spare. And really, just in general, it will let her stay on the board, just healing a bit here and there anyways. Her next attack makes her very, very unique. It's also Mystic and called Devastate Intellect. Has a range of 2, strength of 8 for 8 power. However, this attack doesn't deal damage. Instead, the target character will lose that much power instead. And while that's neat, that's only half of it. On 1 wild, the target will gain stun. On 2 wilds, the target will be staggered. But if you roll a crit, a wild, 2 hits, and 2 skulls out of those 8 dice, well, you trigger something new called Devour Mind. It says after the attack is resolved, if the target character is healthy, it becomes dazed. If the target character is injured, it becomes KO'd. Now, let's dig into the math real quick of how likely it actually is to hit some of this crazy trigger. And all of this dice math is done by the MCP resident dice expert, Jacob from Xavier Protocols, and not by me, who has no idea how to do any of this except for some guessing, and well, no, you don't want that. If you were just rolling the 8 dice, there is only a 6.75% chance of getting this trigger off. But because she is a member of the Black Order, it's probably worth looking at these numbers under the influence of Death's Decree, which can add 2 or 4 dice to the attack. If you add 2 dice, the odds jump up to 16.32%, and if Supergiant is on her injured side, it will go up to 28.12% with those extra 4 dice. So the odds aren't impossible, but they're also never really good odds to hit it. But the times that you do, and to a Hulk or Dormammu, well, those will feel really, really good. And worst case, you are hopefully stealing some power away anyways. It is also worth mentioning that even if you get the Devour Mind trigger, you don't actually do any damage. So if Hulk had 15 health left and gets dazed from this, he will still be at 15 health if an allied is able to come and field dress him. But they will still lose any power and have those conditions added on. So, is this attack good? And I really don't know. I mean, around 7% of the time, yes, it's going to be really, really good. But things need to line up pretty nicely. It needs to be a big threat who has lots of health left for the attack to be valuable. Supergiant needs to be within range 2 of them and have 8 power. It's a lot of asks. But if these stars align, it's probably worth a shot every now and again. As we start looking at her superpowers, we first have her active Submit, which costs X. X being up to 5 power in this case, because Submit lets Supergiant interact with a civilian token within range X without having to pay an additional 1 to interact. So right now this is of limited use, being able to pick up a spider-infected or the Skrull or Senator once they have been uncovered. But still something kind of neat at least. Her next power is reactive and called Supreme Control. It costs 2 power and can be used when an allied character within range 4 of her would be pushed. That ally is then not pushed. Basically, she already has a different version of the Soul Gem attached to her. I guess if you really wanted her to almost always have about 8 power every activation for her spender, then I can see how the gem becomes a bit more needed. But otherwise, the only power she will need reliably is for her Supreme Control and maybe some tactic cards. So let's break down this very different character that AMG has given us. And it's going to be a bit more difficult to do these standard pros and cons because, well, she's just different. For example, she can become one of the tankiest characters in the game if your opponent doesn't have any mystic or energy attacks in their lineup. Especially since 1 damage chip that physical and throws can do to her, she can easily heal back with her builder. But then on that flip side, she won't be holding objectives for you. Energy attacks and mystical attacks will treat her as if she was an average 3-threat character though. As an anti-control piece, she can be very, very valuable with her Supreme Control, but that's a lot more matchup specific. And then there is some awesome and dangerous spender that can sometimes effectively deal 15 damage, and other times it may just sap away 2 or 3 power. Really, her kit all in all balances itself out with extreme highs and extreme lows that make her a niche character that can be a great fit in the right matchup, or maybe in particular affiliations that will appreciate what she can bring. However, there is one downside that can't be overstated, and that's her short move on a 35mm base. The only other 2 characters to be cursed with that stat are Crossbones and Mysterio, and at least both of them have some sort of additional movement given to them through an attack or superpower. This isn't the case with Supergiant, and it makes her the slowest character in the game. So there are going to be some objectives where she just does not need to be taken, like in any of the D scenarios, amongst others. I did talk about her being a niche character that will be good for certain matchups or even scenarios though. So by that, let's look at an objective like Gamma Waves or Intrusions Downtown that respectively use the E or C objective layout. Gamma is probably the better example because of the high point values, and it won't require Supergiant moving that much. But her ability to stop allies from getting shoved around on such high point scoring objectives can become very valuable. Not to mention, she should see plenty of enemy rolls for her Omnipathy superpower to generate that extra power she wants. Affiliation-wise, I think if you are taking her in Black Order, it will be as a 3-threat since you have characters better for killing stuff and more reliable than her Spender. And it's an expensive affiliation as it is, and another 3-threat helps on that end of things. Outside of that home affiliation, I can see her being a boon to Kingpin's criminal organization. Since Kingpin cares so much about his secures, especially on the healthy side, she'd be able to help that part where usually the answer to Kingpin is displacing his characters. She at least helps mitigate some of that. However, outside of that, I'm not too sure if she'll see much table time for me personally. Again, she's going to be a character who shines on those particular setups and will be pretty rough to bring into others. But enough about the girls themselves, let's take a look at some of these new tactic cards. And while this pack does come with some really cool ones, like well-laid plans for Maw and Supergiant in the form of Psychic Shockwave, and a semi-drop-off card for Black Swan and Black Dwarf, there is one that I think warrants at least a comment or two from me, and that is First of the Black Order. It allows you to promote Corvus Glaive to a leader for the Black Order with the new leadership of Right Hand Man. It says when an allied Black Order character dazes or KOs an enemy character, all other Black Order characters gain 1 power. So this is a pretty restrictive card in 2 ways, which I personally think is one too many. First, because of the timing of when this card is played, it takes one of your 5 tactic card slots. So basically, to play this leadership, you are down a tactic card for the rest of the game. Secondly, this is the first leadership that cares about affiliated status to both trigger and benefit from the leadership. So let's say I was running a 5-wide team with Right Hand Man, with Corvus, Proxima, Black Swan, Nebula, and Iron Man. The leadership will only trigger when Corvus, Proxima, or Black Swan daze or KO an enemy, and only 2 of those other 5 members would be eligible to get an extra power. So it really makes you focus to lean, or makes you want to focus / lean into Black Order characters, which honestly I'm okay with. But I really wish it didn't take a tactic card slot, especially since we just got 2 more cool tactic cards for Black Order, and a reason to play Blood to Spare to boot. Instead, it honestly feels more punishing to bring this instead of just bringing Thanos, who is pretty widely regarded and feared because of what he is able to do anyways. That said, the previous iteration of leaderless Black Order has been fun to play, so I'll be giving this a try and see how it goes at least. But that is all I have for this pack. As always, if you have enjoyed my thoughts and are new to the channel, hit the subscribe button for a weekly dose of MCP content in the form of reviews, battle reports, and other MCP goodness. And if you subscribe and leave a comment, you will be entered for that MCP expansion giveaway. As well, you can also find the Gamers Guild podcast on several different podcast apps and platforms and all that kind of stuff if you want to hear more. Thank you all for watching, and until next time, keep on gaming.